Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Small Cap Discoveries conference call. Today on our call, we have Neil Seeman, the CEO of RIWI Corp, for an update on the company. RIWI trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol RIWI and on the OTC under RWCRF. The company is trading at $325 with roughly 18 million shares outstanding, or about a $58 million market cap. I'd now like to hand it over to Paul Andriola.
Great, thanks, Trevor. Neil, great to have you on again. We were just chit-chatting about a few things, which we will get to in a moment, but for the sake of audience and some of the audience that don't know about RIWI, why don't you just give us a real short introduction to the company?
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Trevor. RIWI stands for Real-Time Interactive Worldwide Intelligence. We're a global survey, global trend tracking, and predictive analytics company, collecting a unique stream of opinion data, ad testing data in every country of the world on behalf of three sectors: security, finance, and humanitarian aid, or the government sector. And we make our money through long-term subscriptions or monthly subscription agreements.
Fantastic. Right on. So you just recently announced your Q3 numbers, which we'll get into, but probably more exciting than anything is some of the data you guys collect is around elections. And of course, in the US, we've had a very significant election. Why don't you just tell us a little bit more about what the company does and maybe any role that you sort of play in collecting data around that?
Thanks, Paul. It was kind of like 2016. We got dragged into this elections work by our finance clients, new finance clients, and we didn't anticipate doing this election. And so we were tasked with essentially questioning every single day with a new random subset of Americans, and predominantly Americans who hadn't answered an election poll ever before, or at least in a year, asking them to forecast the winner. And we were tasked with essentially questioning the common wisdom, the received wisdom, that there was going to be a big blue wave. And so we disconfirmed that hypothesis every day since September 8th. There were a couple exceptions, moments in the campaign that changed that. And so, yeah, we did that. It was quite stressful. The reason it was quite stressful was because we knew that the public media polls were off. We and a number of other sort of folks behind the scenes at other companies around the world were astonished by how far off they were. So we were up late nights just trying to figure out how they could be so wrong about again repeating with such certainty that it was going to be a big blue wave. 400 plus electoral college seats for President-elect Biden. So,
yeah, you're dead right. I mean, so many of the pollsters were just so dead wrong, and you guys were much closer to the truth. Tell us how, like, why the discrepancy, and how were you guys able to get to where you were in terms of accuracy?
So public media pollsters don't talk to real people, and really, I mean, at the end of the day, what we know to be true is that, people who answer traditional polls really don't reflect the audience of Americans. And, and this was a much bigger gaffe than in 2016, a much bigger problem, because all of the oversampling, all of what I call the art craft of polling, actually blew up in their faces and didn't work. They oversampled non-college educated white men. They did a range of things to try to correct, but the fundamental problem is that their instrument is broken, right? So their instrument is the voter file database, or it's an online sample. But when your electorate is changing, right, and this is not just happening in America, but in many coalitions, and the Trump coalition clearly changed. We saw that pretty early. You can't do anything about it, no matter how sort of creative, intelligent you are. And so that explains, in my mind, a big reason they were off. It is true that I don't like to call it the shy Trump voter effect. It is true that the undetected Trump voter effect was in play, no doubt, and there are ways to correct for that using good question design, like Trafalgar Group did in the United States, which is they called it with a certainty in the Electoral College for President Trump, but nonetheless, they're widely hailed as having got it sort of very, very close as well.
So, I mean, we've now seen two major presidential elections in the U.S. where, election polling has been so almost devastatingly wrong. Is it fair to say, like, the traditional election polling is broken? And, more specifically, what does this mean for you guys as a business opportunity? Tell us a bit about the market opportunity for RIWI under those circumstances.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, for us, what it's about is licensing our technology to consultancies, public relations firms who specialize in this. We're not in the business of sort of monetizing our minds, my colleagues' minds. I mean, I work with some very smart people, but at the end of the day, we're providing data and a machine that can be leveraged better by other people who are in that business. So that's what the opportunity set is. I mean, I think particularly the higher opportunity set is in message testing. A lot of people, they hear about public polling and such, but it doesn't really make a lot of money, except for the folks behind the scenes. I mean, I'm very well familiar, for example, with one gentleman whose company that I'm well familiar with. It's the only other company I know that accurately predicted the 2016 election very confidently for President Trump, and nobody knows his name. He's never on TV. One of the things that's really interesting about the experience is you learn the difference between experts who pose as experts on TV and the people who are really in the weeds and getting things right. And that's why we saw something very interesting in this campaign. We saw things like Frank Luntz offering a very public apology to the internal pollster for President Trump, and a number of things that we've never seen before. Really quite astonishing. I don't think it means the end of the art craft of polling, in the sense that I do believe that there are experts in big data analytics. There are experts in question design. There are experts in focus groups. So from a market perspective, opportunity for RIWI, there are a lot of experts in the Electoral College who love what we have done and are looking at things like melding focus groups with what we can do digitally and sort of test it, evaluate it. So that's where we can de-stress ourselves and license and offer our technology for others that are in that business day to day.
So, you deal with a lot of financial clients or financial institutions that are looking for all sorts of data. Maybe specifically give us some suggestions as to how they might monetize the data that you guys can provide for them.
Yeah, so in this particular election, these two finance clients that were not allowed yet to be public, they're very large, well-respected institutions. They valued our data for exactly what we were tasking us to do, which was disconfirm the predominant hypothesis, right? And that enabled them to do certain things, essentially because the thesis, I'm not a political scientist, but the thesis is that with President-elect Biden constrained, no matter whether it's 50 or 52 Republicans in the Senate, if he doesn't have, let's just say, the big blue wave, he's going to be constrained against the sort of the more progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Again, that may or may not be correct, but that is our clients valued that very much. Now, more broadly, though, we're well known. We're very liked among these clients, and that's great for us. So it builds up our credibility within this community, and we're doing more and more of that. The opportunity for us in finance, and we love working with finance clients that are very creative, that want to understand things like China, increasingly with the Chinese consumer essentially driving demand of US-based equities. That's a very important area of focus for us. So high frequency economic data collection in China is just very, very important for finance clients to understand the direction of U.S. goods and services, certain verticals, certain equities that are U.S. based but affected by the Chinese consumer. And then increasingly, the finance community cares, of course, about all things COVID, which we do as well. You know, issues relating to vaccine economics, vaccine hesitancy, which sectors, subsectors will be resilient, which ones won't. These are the kinds of things that they are talking with us about, engaging us on.
So how do you take the success you've just seen here in terms of accurate data compilation, and how do you market that now? How do you go and find more clients because of what you've just been able to do here?
Yeah, well, we learned from our mistakes in 2016, actually, from a marketing perspective. Marketing is fascinating to me. So in 2016, we didn't give sophisticated methodologists enough time and enough data to really evaluate our work. We did this in advance. So at this time, and of course, we put this all up. There is a wide range of fragmented media that we've had out publicly, sort of predicting that it would be a narrow race. But this time around, from a marketing perspective, we have a lot of methodologists of all sorts. Well, we had one in the Globe and Mail actually just the other day, documenting that we had done what we did, but more importantly, we have a wide range of methodologists who can really get their hands in the weeds of the data, and then they leverage it to essentially convince, and we work with, and that's what's happening now. So we're in the business of talking with various groups who can, of their own accord, market and sell. To for example, issue campaigns. So it's not just about supporting a candidate; it's often about supporting a campaign, an issue related campaign.
Great. So I mean, we talked a lot about election data and stuff around that, but maybe talk to a little bit about: are you able to broaden your sort of the data you can collect, and more importantly, you know, we know you deal a lot with governments and financial institutions. What other kind of organizations now are you looking at that might want some of the data you're collecting?
Yeah, I mean, a good example are associations and large corporates. So just yesterday, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday I was interviewed by Jennifer Curley. She's publisher of Association 100, CEO of Curley and Company. And she's a leader in American public relations, and all the members of that association are the biggest associations in America, who want to understand how they can leverage RIWI data to essentially measure the impact of a corporate campaign. Use RIWI for brand audits. Brand audits are an area where, let's just say, there's been a lot of dippy data. Where corporates are often given sort of the answer that, or CEOs are often given the answer that they want to hear, as opposed to, hey, you know, your brand's actually in trouble, right? So these are the kinds of ways in which we can, and that's what we're doing now, leverage what we've done on the political side to actually break into that type of work, which is much more lucrative.
And then I wanted to bring up a company that you had actually told me about a while ago that just went public. Palantir went public recently. What can you tell us about sort of I call it the polling or data collection or AI data collection industry as a whole? And do you see any sort of interest because of that, or any competitive threats because of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Palantir is an excellent company. So Palantir is a data platform company, and it's probably the most well-known data platform company out there. And we share similar clients, some of them, but they ingest data from different sources onto their platform, which then they sell. And they've had tremendous success in a variety of sectors. I think one similarity between them and us is that they really proved their success within the government sector, and then they sort of pivoted now, so they predominantly, I believe, serve corporates. But that being said, there's so many platform companies like that out there, such that RIWI can combine its data sets with them, and then resell them, and that's what we're doing with a number of companies. I mean, I can imagine a time where RIWI's a button on every platform company of note. So Bloomberg would be an example of another platform company where RIWI can, of course, be the button of intelligence to a variety of different areas. But at the same time, you talk about competition. I mean, RIWI can also evolve to be a bit of a platform of its own, right? So essentially, be nimble, be able to ingest different types of data at a client's request. And as different data sources are becoming more and more open source, it gives us the opportunity to ingest those data sources, again, just to provide more actionable insights for our clients.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. You just announced your Q3. Why don't we talk a little bit about your numbers? It was another profitable quarter, so congratulations. However, revenues were down a little bit from the same period last year. What can you tell us in general about Q3, and was there an effect because of COVID or anything else that you can tell us?
Yeah, I mean, COVID is an issue that's in our case, it's essentially affected project starts, initiations, really in ways that are affect what we call the milestoning of certain initiatives in ways that sometimes can be, sometimes cannot be predictable. That's why we like to say RIWI is a company that should be evaluated on an annual basis at this stage and scale of our growth. So I would, it's interesting. I would say just generally, I'm happy to say that COVID is sort of neutral in terms of its effect on RIWI. I don't, and that puts us, I think, in a minority of companies. To the extent that it's had sort of challenging effects on us, it's largely because of sort of expected curveballs. Well, I shouldn't say expected curveballs, unexpected curveballs, but that are retrospectively understandable, like the idea that, hey, that sort of cycles of decision making just get pushed over. The project is still a priority project. I mean, we don't work for companies, any companies, as far as I'm aware, for which our data are kind of a nice to have, right? Like we're not in the business of sort of helping out a marketing team look a little, not, that's cool, but it's just look a tiny bit more glossy. We're in the business of providing data to organizations that really, really value it. And so, the task order doesn't get canceled. It unfortunately sometimes gets delayed. So that's a Q3. I mean, Q3 did reflect the investment that we did, a significant investment too in sales and business development professionals. I'm very pleased with the caliber of applicants and people joining our company. It's very rewarding as a founder to see people of this nature. And then I should say the third issue with Q3, again, this is all in the MD&A, is just receivables, right? So we care about profit, revenues, and cash in the bank, right? So on the receivable side, there was some delay attributable to COVID.
Okay. You recently also just announced a nice contract from Bank of America, $650,000. Maybe just give us some color on that contract.
Yeah, I mean, we have a long-term relationship with that institution, and we enjoy working with that institution as relates in the same as the other financial institutions that we did not work with them on the election sort. We worked with other organizations. I mean, what's I think significant about that work is, again, it's the first contract under our new 3-year agreement, right? So we had one 3-year agreement. We really, in that period of the first agreement, we were successful in unseating a very well-known incumbent provider, and then we renewed, right, for a period of 3 years, and this is the first task order under this 3-year renewal. So of course, all of this is good, and it's also significant in the sense that, and I should say this actually about all our finance partners, is that they don't treat us as just a vendor. I mean, it's a very collaborative endeavor. They treat us, as equals, and we enjoy that. We enjoy that creative collaboration, and I think you only win that after having proven customer success, which we focus on very heavily.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. At this point, I'm going to remind everybody, if you have any questions for Neil, please just use the chat function and offer your question up there. We talked about this a little bit in the past. Right now, you do a lot of, I call it, B2B. You're servicing a lot of sort of large enterprises or groups. But any work or any movement towards a bit more of a self-serve or a customer, type of data package, anything for little guys like us?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. What's funny about that is that we were really heavily pushed in that direction early on. A lot of, as people know here, I think I pushed aside venture capital at the beginning of our company. And there was very much a drive to do that. And there's a lot of great companies that have essentially imploded, that were funded by venture capital, that went to that self-serve model. And that's not to suggest it's a bad idea. It's only to suggest that what we learned is that when you do some self-serve type work, you really have to be customer driven, right? So the mistake that some of these companies did, and these are huge cash injection companies from the venture capital community, was simply they were too top down, and they was too fragmented a marketplace. So I think if we're going to go in that direction, it has to be customer driven, and I think it has to be driven at the enterprise level. So if you have let's just say big company X that wants to engage you, we can also potentially provide sort of single-use licenses in the same way Bloomberg does, such that they can customize their particular queries. So that's kind of the route path we would take. I don't think we would just embark on announcing a big DIY platform without already having an incumbent enterprise player that wanted to pursue that route.
Mm-hmm. Neil, you guys collect all sorts of data, like probably even some crazy data. Just for fun, what's stuff that we might not know, maybe a crazy bit of trivia or just any kind of data you think would be entertaining or interesting to hear about?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. I mean, I'm always sensitive to making sure I don't say anything inappropriate. Look, I'll just say this about this election. And this election, one of the things that's really interesting is that President Trump's policies are very popular. I mean, many of them are very popular. His economic policies are very popular, and that's a narrative that is just not, I don't think, as a Canadian, I don't hear that narrative in the media much. That didn't translate into an electoral college win for him. But it is interesting because I think it's an important narrative. But I mean, but for the Democrat Party to be sensitive to as well. I mean, we've had the greatest intensity of interest from people, sort of centrists and Democrats. People are really trying to understand, let's just say the direction of the Democratic Party in the United States, and so that to me is interesting. We have a lot of data that supported that. Now, of course, I'm speaking very, very broadly here. I think another thing that's really interesting to me is vaccine hesitancy. So that we're studying that a lot, both for internal research, economic thought leadership, marketing, and customer work. And that what I'm learning is that the reasons that people are hesitant toward the vaccine range so much, right? Like it's really cartooned in the news. People say, oh, it's because, you know, they're extremist this, extremist that. But, you know, a lot of it is really informed by just different perspectives, and it varies depending on, you know, the norms and attitudes of the people around you. So I find the variety of reasons people are resistant to public health, vaccines, quite educational.
So I'm absolutely fascinated that you brought that subject up, because it's a little bit more near and dear to some of sort of what I do as well. But are you finding a difference? And maybe, I don't know if you're able to say this or not, but the U.S. almost seems to operate in its own ecosystem or own atmosphere. Is that sort of vaccine hesitancy the same outside of the U.S., or are you able to parse that type of data?
Yeah, we are able to parse it, and we're studying it around the world. Vaccine hesitancy varies a lot, and it varies over time. So when we last studied it in America, so we are seeing vaccine hesitancy everywhere. Right now, you know, there's parts of the world like China that are at different stages where there is a greater support for taking the vaccine than elsewhere. But what we know to be true is it changes over time, right? So it was at about 36% in America hard resistance to a vaccine over the course of the summer, and that didn't vary among blue states and red states. It was quite sort of apolitical. But that, of course, was before the very positive news from the leading drug candidates, and before the very good news out of Oxford, AstraZeneca, about their drug being highly effective among the elderly. So we know, based on historic data, that vaccine hesitancy can change overnight, as sometimes people you know, change for different reasons. And one of the things that we're studying is the triggers, right? Like, okay, if your friends and family, if you're local religious leader, if you're you know, what are the inclinations that drive change? And that's so it varies a lot, Paul. And then it's also very affected by local events. I mean, in China, for example, things changed quite dramatically. They were one of the most vaccine resistant countries in the world, according to our data, over the course of the summer. And we attribute that largely to some very prominent vaccine-related controversies that were local in that country. So it's a local issue, and it's variable, and it needs to be measured over time. That's the sort of thing you need high-frequency data for. You can't rely on so-called polls or snapshots. Oh. I'm sorry, I just got a note from Trevor. I do have to be sensitive to time, so maybe we can take one more question.
I think you should.
You got it. You got it. I think I can hear Jim in the background here. Well, you know what? Why don't I just do this instead? We are sensitive to time, but why don't we leave it with you, Neil? Any sort of parting message you want to give us? Anything that we, you know, as investors or fans of you guys, what should we watch out for sort of over the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, well, you know, again, you know, follow us annually. Of course, that's the better measure, yardstick of our success. We you know, follow the news. We are as transparent as we can and are allowed to be. I think you know, Well, one thing, this is not material, it's just information to be aware of. For those of you who are interested in mental health, which is affecting everyone around the world, next week, beginning Monday, with media partners and universities across North America, we will be releasing, and this is the first time it's ever been done, trends and rates of different challenges of mental health on university campuses across North America. This is something I'm very committed to personally, bringing awareness to that and trying to understand what's going on. So that's coming out next week, and there's some really great journalists involved in that work as well. And that's going to be quite long lasting. It's not going to be just one media drop. So something to look forward to next week.
Okay, fantastic. I highly recommend people listening take advantage of some of the data that's constantly sort of made available by RIWI. But Neil, what's your website address if people want to get more information?
Thank you, Paul. RIWI.com. And then for those of you who are interested in our applications to the financial services sector, I had the great honor of just doing a podcast which just got released today with Emmett Kilduff, the founder and CEO of Eagle Alpha, and it's called "How to Profit from Data." Anyway, just Google it, and we lay out chunk by chunk all the different ways in which RIWI provides alpha to financial market participants.
Fantastic. Neil Seeman, CEO of RIWI Corp. Thanks as always. We look forward to catching up with you the next time there's another material event with the business.
You bet. Okay, thanks, guys. Really appreciate everyone's support, and thank you. Have a great, safe weekend, guys. Take care.
Awesome.